Tonight, less than 48 hours ahead of that high-stakes summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, President Biden calling him a worthy adversary and delivering this warning.
If he chooses not to cooperate and acts in a way that he has in the past relative to cybersecurity and some other activities, then we will respond.
The president also denouncing Putin's crackdown of his political opponents when asked what would happen if high-profile Putin critic Alexei Navalny died in a Russian jail.
It would be a tragedy. It would do nothing but hurt his relationships with the rest of the world, in my view, and with me.
President Biden's arrival here at NATO heralded by allies as a new chapter, where former President Trump slammed the transatlantic alliance as obsolete. Mr. Biden today touted the U.S.'s commitment to the group as a sacred obligation.
I just want all of Europe to know that the United States is there.
But critics say the president's policy towards Russia has been weak, including his recent decision to waive sanctions that would have blocked the completion of a gas pipeline Putin wants in Europe.
He's not going into this particular meeting with Putin from a position of strength, but rather of weakness, because he's already given him so many concessions.
Tonight, President Biden responding to another criticism that this summit is an undeserved reward for the Russian leader.
Every world leader here as a member of NATO thanked me for meeting with Putin.
Before arriving in Brussels, the president's trip to the UK punctuated by pageantry, a royal reception courtesy of the Queen at Windsor Castle.
She reminded me of my mother in terms of the look of her and just the generosity.
Did you invite her to the White House?
Yes.
Peter, has there been a final decision as to whether the two presidents will appear for questions after the meeting?
Lester, with the president saying that he's prepared to confront Vladimir Putin, we now know that he will not be doing it in public. The White House announcing that President Biden will not hold a joint news conference afterwards with Putin. Instead, he'll take questions alone.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.